who wears a bunch of hats. He is an attorney, and if you're watching on SuperTalk TV, he's got all of the books on the bookshelf behind him to prove that he is indeed a barrister. He is I guess, part-time television announcer, analyst on the SEC Network Plus for Mississippi State events, and he is running the Bulldog Initiative, which is Mississippi State's primary NIL platform. Charlie, we've been trying to catch up with you for a while. A lot going on. Thanks so much for spending a few minutes with us this afternoon.
Anytime I can share the airwaves with Brian Haydad, I know that I'm having a good day.
I feel like that occasionally. I don't feel like that every day, but occasionally I feel that way.
He didn't feel like that the day after Thanksgiving, I promise you that.
I was off that day, wasn't I? I don't remember.
No, you were here. You were here.
I think I was here. So, Charlie, let's dive into to an NIL discussion specifically related to the Bulldog Initiative. And we were talking kind of off air. I'm kind of wondering from your perspective, when you look at NIL, how it has evolved in the last, I guess, 17 months or so since it kind of became legal to go down this road. Because when we started this, it was name, image, and likeness, marketing opportunities for student athletes, and it very clearly has turned into a massive recruiting tool that most people are calling pay for play. So when you look at the environment in which we are in right now, give me your 30,000-foot perspective.
A lot of uncertainty, really. It's interesting when you look at it. Mississippi State and Ole Miss, the last college baseball champion of the old era and the first of the new, in the sense that when Mississippi State came home from the College World Series, having won it, NIL was a thing, and it wasn't when they left to go there. And so I think back, that seems like years ago, but in terms of the way that laws unfold, it hadn't been that long, really. But I think the thing that has probably frustrated everybody, it certainly me, is I'll just say it, a lack of leadership at the NCAA level to say what we can do and not do, what is legal and illegal. I don't know if it comes from fear. I don't know if it comes from an unwillingness to act or an uncertainty or all the above. But I always get a kick. The NCAA puts out interim guidance, and they always tell you what you should have been doing, but they never told you what in advance what to do. So I will say this, though. I think a lot of people have a negative perception of NIL, and there certainly are. Let's be clear. Don't think for a minute there aren't kids sitting in Oxford and Starkville getting phone calls from people across the state line saying, have you thought about where you're playing next year? Those things are clearly going on, but there's a lot good too. And I think about college baseball as an example. We're sitting in a state without a lottery, without a way to fund some things, where the average baseball player gets about a 42% scholarship. This gives a way to help kind of bridge the gap just from a fairness standpoint with what we've all been dealing with compared to a Vanderbilt, for example. It gives kids the option to stay in school another year who might have felt the pressure to go pro perhaps earlier. So there's goods, there's bads. I think the biggest thing for me is just the uncertainty in the environment. And it's none of our fault, but we all have to live with it.
When you hear Greg Sankey on numerous occasions talk about the need for national legislation, needing our Congress to act on this, I'm a Greg Sankey fan, and I think he's a really, really bright guy, and maybe that is the easiest thing. But expecting Congress to do something in a timely fashion that's going to make sense to me is a little bit foolhardy. And the other piece of it, he says, is because the current environment we have is a patchwork quilt of state laws that you don't have everybody playing by the same rules. Do you fall into line with what he says about us needing a national standard, whether that comes from the NCAA or from Congress, or do you think there's a better way to go about it?
No, I think ultimately we do need some sort of standard, whether that comes through collective bargaining with the athletes, whether it comes from Congress. I mean, it took, 15 votes to figure out who the speaker was going to be. So I'm not terribly encouraged that they're going to very quickly get behind a NIL law. And I never underestimate their ability to make things worse through legislation instead of better. And so ultimately, I think to some degree, we're going to see a market correction. There's going to be just the forces of economics are going to prevail at some point and put an end to some of the foolishness. But at the same point, I do think there has to be some sort of standard. I wouldn't rule out, though, that in 4 or 5 years, I think one could have a very good debate about how long the NCAA as we know it will be in existence, and whether there may be some new body, whether the SEC itself can take charge of things. And I'd be perfectly happy to have somebody like Greg Sankey doing it. I'm not so sure I want Tommy Tuberville or some of the guys in Washington trying to figure it out.
Charlie, one thing I've been curious about for the past few weeks is, the season ends, and I know, players meet with you about the Bulldog Initiative and what they're going to see from the Bulldog Initiative going forward. How do you arrive at the number that you're willing to talk to these guys about? How do you come across with, if you want to call it a salary or a signing bonus or whatever it is, how do you come up with the number you're willing to offer these guys? Is that something you talk with the coaches about, or is that something that you're you don't have a lot of guidance on?
Well, and one of the things, because of the NCAA rules, coaches can't actually tell you what to do. I think I'm probably fortunate to live less than a mile from campus. And so, and through some of my other hats that I get to wear, to have a decent idea about who is, what the NIL value of particular players are. But to a great extent, I'm just trying to have to make good decisions and decisions on the fly. And obviously the challenge is, there's no book, there's no manual. It's an art, not a science, as they say, to trying to figure it out. One of the things, though, for me, and I was never a believer in Moneyball. I thought the movie was, they leave out a lot of the key details, like the fact that you got Barry Zito and Tim Hudson pitching, right? So I don't really think.
And Mark Mulder. Don't forget Mark Mulder. He was really good.
Yeah, that's right. But, you're not going to win with that mentality necessarily. But at the same time, financial discipline is important to me. And I think as emotion goes up, one of the things that goes down is intelligence and good decisions. So I think if there's any benefit that I've had over the years of being around sports is I've become less emotional and more analytical. And so you just try to make good decisions. And then you want to think about what a difference those players can have for you in terms of what recognition they get to help perpetuate what you're doing. And so, like I said, there's no guide. There's no, what was it when we were kids? You collected cards, baseball cards, you go get the Beckett's and you could see what a card cost. We don't have one of those. You just got to figure it out as you go. But we feel like we've been financially responsible, which is one of the things I think is just paramount. Unfortunately, and this is going to hurt schools, Brian, if you look around the country right now, just watch Twitter. How many guys in basketball in particular were promised things? And now every time you see a tweet that says, hey, all these promises aren't coming through, they're the ones liking and retweeting it. And ultimately, there's a reputational cost to schools when their collectives can't keep their promises. And that's kind of one of the things for me from day one is we're not going to promise anything we can't deliver on.
Got a couple of minutes left here in this segment. Charlie's going to stick with us through the commercial break for another one. Let's go back to late October, early November when John Cohen leaves Mississippi State. And it's reported by Ross Dellinger that the Bulldog Initiative is he made it sound like they were in dire straits. And that sort of sparked two things. One, I feel like it was misinformation. And two, it sparked a grassroots campaign on message boards, on social media to get people to join the Bulldog Initiative. And you had a massive increase in membership. Just sort of talk us through those days after John Cohen departed, when that report comes out, and how you handled that and how people reacted to that report.
If I could bring John Cohen back today and have him quit again, and maybe have him keep doing that, we'd be right where we need to be. It was, what is it about us guys from Mississippi, right? Sometimes we like to be challenged. We like to be told that there's a problem before we react to it. We don't always come inside till we actually see the tornado. And I think there was some element of that. People wanted kind of to defend themselves. The other thing is, and this was a strategic decision on my part, was you can get out there and brag about what you're doing, or you can keep quiet and just try to do good work quietly. I'm a little more of the second. There's a reason that the major league owners don't turn over the books to the players. And the more you brag about what you do, you're giving away a ton of information, and information is leverage. So there was a lot of misinformation that was put out. That being said, I would love to. Our numbers of online enrollees quadrupled in 8 days. And so, like I said, maybe the key to success is more misinformation.
We're going to continue our conversation with Charlie Winfield, who's running the Bulldog Initiative, which is the NIL platform for Mississippi State. If you're a Mississippi State fan and you don't know how to be a part of this, we'll let Charlie tell you how to get involved with that when we come back. Right now, we continue our conversation with Charlie Winfield on the Farm Bureau guest line. And Charlie, I teased this before the break. Let's make sure we do this before time runs out. In terms of people that are either on the fence and haven't yet pulled the trigger or are listening and they're like, oh, wow, this is news to me. I can be involved. How do people get involved with supporting Mississippi State's NIL through the Bulldog Initiative?
Well, it's easy. They can go to bulldoginitiative.com and we can connect them right there. It's got all the information they need, and happy to talk to anyone any way they want to talk. They could call us, email us, or find a lot of information there. To the people on the fence, Richard, I get this all the time. People saying, I don't know that I like NIL. And I tell them, I don't like the summer heat, but I use my air conditioner. You know, you can't ignore that it happens, because much like gravity, this is just a rule of nature right now. It exists. And so we either have to react to it, because pretending like it's there or isn't there isn't going to work.
You know, we talked with Walker Jones a few weeks back. I obviously haven't talked to anybody at Alabama or Auburn or LSU. Everybody has all of these, but everybody, I think, is protecting whatever is in their war chest like it's the nuclear codes. Nobody's letting that actual information out unless it's, to generate publicity and show that they've gotten to a certain benchmark. And so I'm not asking you to divulge that, but I am curious, when some of the things that were announced at the end of the season, guys coming back, how do you balance the resources that you have available in terms of player retention versus player acquisition, be it through high school coming in recruiting or the transfer portal?
Yes, it's pretty easy for me philosophically, just from the very beginning. I always laugh. There have been players who've been rumored to go to schools for a lot of money, and I say that they'd have paid a lot more to get rid of them a year later if you'd have polled the fan base. And so you just have to be careful about shiny new things. I'm one of these guys who's a fan of guys who've proven themselves. The other thing is, in the NIL world, there's really just a few rules that we know that are hard, fast. And that is that people in my position can't go talk to recruits, and you can't go try to induce people to transfer. So it makes it really easy for me, because we're playing within the lines. And so for us, it's all about dealing with people who are on our campus and who are athletes already. So for us, the balance becomes pretty easy.
And yet that's happening. I mean, like we can't pretend like it's not happening other places.
No, it absolutely is. And it's, what we're starting to see is that some of the people doing it are starting to get letters. There's starting to be questions asked. Now, I have my doubts as to how far the NCAA is going to go, but it doesn't help when you see schools. I won't call any names, but in South Florida, who have a guy announce he's transferring one day, and within an hour, somebody's bragging about their NIL deal. Maybe they work quickly. I don't know. They clearly know things are going on. But for us, I think our philosophy is just going to be about trying to take care of the guys who've been here and done it.
I know Hayden wants to jump in.
I was going to say,
yeah, go ahead.
In terms of attracting, what you have to do is create an environment that people recognize once they go, there will be deals available. And so to the extent you're trying to attract people to us, there's a reason singers go to Nashville, because they know they can be found. And we want people to know they can be found when they come here.
Sustainability is a question that's fascinating to me. And I'm just going to make this number out of thin air. Let's say that you raise $5 million this year, and that's great. And that allows you to do all the things that you need to do. How do you turn around and raise $5 million again next year and the year after that, or have that number go up because the market is growing?
It's a challenge. I think one of the ways that you can do it, and one of the only ways, is because you can only go back to the well so many times with the same people. One of the things that we've been able to do is to help create marketing opportunities for businesses. Those are dollars that have been being spent. And now what you're looking at is a reallocation of money that was going to be spent anyway, and you try to move things that way. But just in all candor, sustainability is one of the things that keeps me up at night, and it goes back to why you don't make promises that you aren't sure you can keep, because we just don't know how long you can keep doing this.
Charlie, we got about 60 seconds here, but we had this question on the text line, and we had it today on Thunder and Lightning in our rumbling segment. Do you foresee a day where the Bulldog Initiative and the Bulldog Club, or any schools like that, are working together where your donation to the initiative can improve your seats in the stadium, can get you perks on campus, things like that?
We hope so. One of the things, and I think having a new athletic director in place will help answer that question. The NCAA guidance says that a school can't give an asset to someone for donating to a collective. Although the school can ask you to give, they can't give you an asset. The question then becomes, are points of that nature, are those rewards an asset, or is it something intangible that doesn't count? And right now it's just another gap in the rules. We just don't know.
Maybe one of those books over your shoulder would answer that question.
Well, I'd like to answer it for them, but they just won't let me do it yet.
Hey, Charlie, thanks so much for time.